Director Krickstall's emergency override just failed for the third time, and the human was still sitting there making a sandwich while the siren cubs ignored 10,000 credits worth of genetically perfect prey. This is impossible. Krickstall hissed into the comm, watching the monitoring displays light up with cascading failures. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel, that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. The cubs should be frenzied. Pheromone concentrations are triple specification. Why are they not feeding? Velora, the station's senior conservation specialist, cycled through bioscan readouts with mounting dread. Director, they haven't eaten in 6 standard cycles. Muscle degradation is accelerating if they don't accept nourishment within the next 12 hours. I am aware of the timeline. Krickstall snapped, the weight of it pressed against every decision. The Sarthan species, apex predators from the dissolved Kether system, had exactly 2 cubs left in existence. These 2. The adults had died 3 cycles ago from a genetic cascade no one had predicted, and now the entire species survival hung on whether these juveniles would eat. The Galactic Conservation Council had authorized exceptional measures. The prey animals in the habitat were cloned from the cubs' own genetic memory, perfect replicas of what their instincts should recognize as food. The scent markers were exact. The movement patterns were calibrated. Everything was correct. Everything except the cubs themselves, who were currently pressed against the observation barrier, completely ignoring the frantically fleeing prey animals. Behind them, Director Velmora's voice carried a tremor of something that might have been panic in a species capable of panic. They are fixated on something in the observation deck. Krickstall's tertiary eye swiveled to the monitor, showing the public viewing area. A human sat on one of the benches, utterly oblivious to the crisis unfolding. Meters away, the human appeared to be assembling some kind of food item from a small container, stacking various organic layers with the casual focus of someone performing a routine task. Get that human out of there, Krickstall. I tried. The barriers are locked in emergency mode. Override codes are not responding. Then use the announcement system. Tell it to leave. Station-wide speaker crackled to life. Attention, human visitor, please evacuate the observation deck immediately. This is an emergency situation. The human looked up, glanced around the empty observation area with mild confusion, then spotted the camera. He pointed at himself with a questioning expression. Yes, you, Vila transmitted. Please leave at once. The human shrugged, started packing up his food items, and that was when the cubs went absolutely insane. Both juveniles slammed against the containment barrier with enough force to trigger structural integrity warnings. They were not attacking. They were not displaying predatory behavior. They were reaching, stretching, making sound that Krickstall had never heard in 15 cycles of studying Sarthan vocalizations. The cubs were begging. Freeze, Krickstall barked at the human through the speaker. Do not move. The human froze, one hand hovering over his partially assembled sandwich, eyes wide. Velora, what am I seeing? I don't know. The conservation specialist voice had gone very quiet. Director, their vitals are spiking, heart rate increasing, but not from stress. These readings suggest Excitement, anticipation, the cubs are exhibiting behaviors I have never documented in this species. Crickstall watched the monitors in disbelief. Both cubs remained pressed against the barrier, but their postures had shifted. They were not hunting, they were not even particularly aggressive. If Crickstall had not known better, they would have said the cubs looked playful. "What is that human holding?" Crickstall demanded. Velora zoomed in the visual feed. It appears to be a food item common to human culture: bread, preserved meat, plant matter, and what sensors indicate are fermented milk. Proteins, a sandwich, I believe they call it. Sands are obligate carnivores. They should not be interested in plant matter or processed foods. I am aware of their dietary requirements, Director. Then explain why they are attempting to breach containment to reach it. Neither of them had an answer. On the monitor, the human remained motionless, holding his half-made sandwich, looking increasingly uncomfortable as two apex predator cubs stared at him with laser focus through the transparent barrier. Director Crickstall, the emergency channel flared to life with Commander Thritch's voice. I have 30 vessels from the Galactic Conservation Council requesting immediate updates. The preservation fleet is standing by. What is the status of the Sarthon cubs? Crickstall looked at the monitors, at the untouched genetically perfect prey, at the sophisticated feeding protocols, all failing, at the emergency overrides that refused to respond, at the two juvenile apex predators who were currently ignoring every instinct their species possessed to focus entirely on a human's lunch. Commander Crickstall said slowly, we have a situation I cannot adequately explain. Explain it inadequately then. The cubs are refusing all food. They have been refusing for 6 cycles, but 30 seconds ago they became extremely animated over a human sandwich. The comm channel went very, very quiet. Commander, a sandwich, Tonri repeated. Voice flat. Yes, Commander, the last 2 members of an apex predator species are interested in a sandwich. That is correct, Commander. I am dispatching emergency xenobiology teams immediately. Do not let that human move. Do not let that human leave. And for every star in this sector, do not let those cubs stop being interested in whatever they are interested in. Crickstall looked at the human, who was now very carefully not moving, sandwich held at chest level, like an offering to incomprehensible gods. Understood. Commander Crickstall switched channels. Human, I need you to remain exactly where you are. The human's response came through the observation deck's pickup, tinged with the kind of careful confusion that suggested he was reevaluating his entire morning. So is this about the sandwich? Because I've got a turkey sub in here too, if that helps. Mora made a sound that their species should not have been capable of making. The cubs made sounds that their species had definitely never made before, and Crickstall realized that every single protocol they had developed, every procedure they had implemented, every conservation strategy the Council had approved was about to become completely irrelevant. All because of a sandwich. Derek Walsh had been working maintenance at the Galactic Conservation Station for 3 months, and in that time he had learned 2 important things. First, alien plumbing made absolutely no sense. Second, when aliens started using words like emergency protocol and remain stationary, it was usually best to just Go with it, so he said carefully into the air, hoping someone was still listening. I'm guessing this is about the big space cats. They are not cats. Velora's voice came through with the kind of strained patience that suggested this was not the first time they had made this correction to a human. Sarthans are apex predators with a documented hunting efficiency of 98%. They are obligate carnivores with a genetic structure that makes them incapable of processing plant-based nutrients. They should not be interested in your food item. Derek glanced at the cubs who were still pressed against the barrier, watching him with an intensity that was honestly kind of flattering. They seemed pretty interested. That is the problem. Crickstall cut in. Sands do not experience curiosity about food outside their prey spectrum. Their instinct is binary: hunt or ignore. What you are holding should not register to them as food at all. Derek looked down at his sandwich. Turkey, cheddar, lettuce, tomato, little mustard. Pretty standard lunch. Maybe they've never seen bread before. It's kind of a novelty thing. We have presented them with 17 different novel stimulus items over the past cycle, attempting to encourage feeding behavior. Said they ignored all of them but your sandwich. One of the cubs made a sound that Derek could only describe as a chirp. Pleading, hopeful little chirp that absolutely did not match the whole apex predator vibe. Okay, that was actually kind of cute, Derek admitted. Sands do not produce that vocalization, Crickstall said flatly. That sound does not exist in any of our behavioral databases. Well, they're making it now. Derek watched as the second cub joined in, both of them chirping and pawing at the barrier like puppies who had just spotted someone opening a treat bag. Are you sure they're supposed to be scary? Because right now they just look like they want lunch. They have lunch, Mora said with the kind of emphasis that suggested they were holding on to composure by a thread. There are 6 live prey animals in their habitat right now, animals that match their evolutionary prey profile exactly. The pheromone concentration should be triggering feeding frenzy behavior. Instead, they are ignoring the murder buffet to stare at my turkey sandwich. Yeah, I'm getting that. Derek shifted slightly and both cubs tracked the movement with laser focus. So what do you want me to do? Do not move. Crickstall and emergency xenobiology teams are en route. We need to maintain this stimulus until they arrive. You want me to stand here holding a sandwich? Yes, for how long? As long as necessary. Derek considered this. On one hand, his break was definitely over, and he had that filtration system on Deck 7 that needed recalibrating. On the other hand, the alien seemed genuinely panicked, and the cubs were actually pretty adorable in a potentially lethal sort of way. Can I at least sit down? My back's been killing me since I fixed that gravity regulator. In Section 3, there was a pause. Movement may disrupt the stimulus. I'm like 10 ft away from them with a wall in between. I think we're good. Derek moved slowly toward the bench and sat down. The cubs' heads tracked him perfectly, but their interest did not waver. If anything, they seemed more excited that he was getting comfortable. Fascinating, Velora murmured. Their vitals are stabilizing, heart rate decreasing to normal range. Stress hormones dropping. They are calming. Because the human sat down, Crickstall sounded like someone whose entire understanding of biology was actively dissolving. No, Velmora said slowly. They are calming because they believe. The human is settling in to stay. Director, I think they have imprinted on the human as a food provider. That is not possible. Sands do not imprint. They are not social feeders. I am aware of what they are supposed to be. Derek took a bite of his sandwich, mostly because he was actually pretty hungry, and both cubs went absolutely berserk. Not aggressive berserk, excited berserk. They bounced, they chirped, they spun in circles like someone had just told them it was their birthday. Human, what did you just do? Crickstall's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. I took a bite of my sandwich, Derek said around a mouthful of turkey. Was I not supposed to do that? Their neural activity is spiking across all cognitive centers, Velmora reported. Reward pathways are lighting up, pattern recognition is activating. They are not seeing the human eat as a feeding behavior, they are seeing it as Mora. Stop, Director, this makes no sense. But they are processing the humans eating as a social bonding activity. Sands do not bond over food, they compete over food. Then these cubs did not receive that information. Emergency klaxons began blaring throughout the station. Derek nearly dropped his sandwich. What's happening? The cubs' refusal to feed has triggered automated distress protocols. Crick's dial explained, sounding utterly exhausted. We now have approximately 4 hours before the Galactic Conservation Council authorizes emergency intervention. What kind of intervention? The kind that involves sedation, force feeding, and a very high probability of killing them in the process. Derek looked at the cubs. They had calmed down after his bite, now sitting quietly, watching him with patient, hopeful eyes, waiting. So basically, if they don't eat in 4 hours, they die. Yes, and they won't eat the fancy clone prey you made for them. Correct, but they really, really want my sandwich. There was a long pause. Human, we cannot feed them your sandwich. The biological incompatibility alone could. Yeah, I get it. Derek stared at his lunch, at the cubs, at the half-eaten prey animals wandering around behind them, completely ignored. This is insane, you know that, right? This whole situation is completely insane. We are aware, Crickstall said dryly. Good, just making sure we're all on the same page. Derek wrapped up the rest of his sandwich. So when do the emergency xenobiology people get here? Approximately 40 minutes. Great. You guys got any coffee in this place? Because I'm thinking this is going to be a long afternoon. One of the cubs pressed its face against the barrier, right where Derek was sitting. The other one curled up next to it. Both of them watched Derek with absolute unwavering attention, and neither of them looked at the food they were supposed to want at all. The emergency xenobiology team arrived with the kind of urgency that suggested they had broken several speed regulations getting there. Derek counted 4 aliens in what looked like hazmat suits, carrying enough scanning equipment to stock a small laboratory. Director Crystal, the lead scientist, announced senior xenobiologist that reporting, we came as fast as we could. Where are the subjects? Observation Habitat 3, Crickstall said, and I should warn you, I have reviewed the preliminary reports. Thessa's tone suggested she did not believe a word of them. Sarth and cubs exhibiting interest in non-prey items, likely a stress response to inadequate environmental enrichment. We will have them feeding within the hour. Derek, who had been quietly working on his second sandwich, glanced up. You might want to see them. First, before you make promises, Thessa. Notice Derek for the first time. You are the human with the food item. Guilty. Is charged. Derek held up his sandwich. Turkey and Swiss this time, thought I'd switch it up. Both cubs who had been calmly watching Derek immediately perked up. The chirping started again. Thessa stared, her scanning equipment clattered to the floor. That vocalization, she whispered, that is not in the Sarnan behavioral database. Yeah. We covered that already, Derek said. They've been doing it for like an hour. Now impossible. Thessa activated her scanner, pointing it at the cubs. Device immediately began flashing warnings. Their neural patterns are completely wrong. SANs should be showing aggression cascades and territorial dominance markers. These cubs are exhibiting. She stopped, recalibrated. The scanner tried again. No, this cannot be correct. What is it showing? Velura asked. Social bonding patterns. Familial attachment indicators, the kind of brain activity we see in pack animals when they are near their primary caregiver. Thessa looked at Derek. How long have you been raising these cubs? I'm sorry, what? These cubs have imprinted on you as a parent figure. The neural pathways are undeniable. How long have you been their primary caregiver? Derek laughed. I literally met them an hour ago. I'm a maintenance guy. I clean air filters and unclog waste recyclers. I don't raise space cats. They are not cats, Vila muttered reflexively, then explained this. Thessa thrust her scanner toward Crickstall. Sarthans are solitary hunters. They do not form attachments. They do not seek social bonds. Yet these cubs are displaying attachment patterns so strong that their stress levels have decreased by 60% simply because the human is nearby. It's the sandwich, one of Thessa's assistants offered weakly. Maybe there is something in the sandwich composition that I have analyzed. The sandwich, Velura interrupted. Bread. Indigestible by Sarthan biology. Preserved meat, wrong protein structure. Fermented dairy, actively toxic to their species. Vegetable matter, useless. Roughage, there is nothing in that sandwich they should want, and yet Derek took a bite. Both cubs sat up straighter, watching intently. He swallowed. They really want it. Thessa ran another scan. When the human consumed food, the cubs' reward centers activated. They are experiencing pleasure from watching him eat. This suggests. She paused, recalibrating. Again, clears throat. Director Cricks. These cubs are not viewing food as sustenance. They are viewing it as a social bonding activity. We established that already, Crickstall said. No, you do not understand. Thessa gestured at the habitat where 6 prey animals continue to wander around, completely ignored. You have been trying to feed them like they are machines, fuel in, energy out. But they are not responding to the food itself. They are responding to the human's relationship with food. Derek paused mid-bite. Wait, are you saying they want to eat with me, like socially? That is exactly what I'm saying. SANs should not be capable of this behavior. But these cubs are rewriting their own neural pathways in real time to form social food sharing bonds. That's actually kind of sweet, Derek said. That is categorically impossible, Thessa corrected, and yet here we are. Derek looked at the cubs, who were still watching him with patient, hopeful eyes. So what happens now? Crickstall and Thessa exchanged a long look. Now, Crickstall said slowly, we determine if a human sandwich can save an entire species. Derek glanced at his lunch, then at the cubs, then back at the collection of increasingly panicked xenobiologists. You know what, he said, I've had weirder Tuesdays. Commander Thritch arrived 17 minutes later with an emergency authorization code and the expression that suggested he had aged several cycles during the journey. Tell me you have a solution, he said without preamble. We have a theory, Crixt replied carefully. We do not have a solution. The theory involves the human sandwich, Velour added. Thritch looked at Derek, who waved awkwardly. Please tell me this is not as absurd as it sounds. It is significantly more absurd, Thea confirmed. The cubs have formed social bonding patterns around food sharing behavior. They are treating the human as a pack leader and will not feed without social context. Sands do not have pack leaders. These ones appear to disagree. Thenrich studied the monitors showing the cubs still pressed against the barrier, still watching Derek with unwavering focus. How much time do we have? 2 hours and 40 minutes before mandatory intervention, Crickstall said. And if we sedate them for force feeding, 70% mortality rate, possibly higher. Given their weakened state, Thry's jaw tightened. What is your recommendation? Everyone looked at Derek. Why are you all looking at me? Derek asked. Because, Crickstall said quietly, you are the only variable that has changed their behavior. I'm a maintenance guy. I fix things that are broken. I don't. Derek stopped, looking at the cubs, at their hopeful eyes, at the way they perked up every time he moved. You want me to go in there? Yes, Thessa said, with the apex predators. Yes, and feed them my sandwich. That is the theory. Derek was quiet for a long moment. You know, they could just like eat me instead, right? The probability is non-zero, Velora admitted. Wow, great pep talk. Derek stood up, stretched, and started walking toward the habitat entrance. Okay, let's do this before I remember I'm not actually qualified for this human. Wait. Crickestall started. Derek, my name is Derek. He paused at the airlock door. And if I'm about to become Space Cat food, you should probably at least know what to put on my memorial plaque. The airlock cycled. Derek stepped into the habitat, sandwich in hand. The cubs approached immediately, but their body language was nothing like hunting behavior. They were cautious, gentle, moving with the kind of careful excitement Derek had seen in shelter dogs meeting new people. Hey there, Derek said softly, crouching down. You guys really want this sandwich, huh? The first cub, the smaller one, chirped and sat down directly in front of him. The second one followed suit. Derek broke off a small piece of bread with turkey and held it out. The first cub leaned forward delicately, took the food from his hand and ate it. Every monitor in the observation room erupted with data. Successful ingestion, Velmora reported, voice shaking. No rejection response. The cub is processing the food. Derek offered a piece to the second cub. Same result. Then he pulled out the actual prey meat Thessa's team had prepared and held it in his other hand. Both cubs looked at it, looked at Derek, and then gently took the meat from his palm. They are eating the prey meat, Thessa whispered. They just needed the human to offer it to them. It was never about the sandwich, Crickstall said, understanding flooding through. It was about the act of sharing. They needed to learn that food could be a gift, not just a hunt. Derek sat down in the habitat, cubs curling up on either side Of him, he fed them pieces of meat, interspersed with tiny bits of sandwich. They ate everything he offered, tails swishing contentedly. Species saved by lunchtime, Derek said, scratching one cub behind the ear. Definitely going in my top 10 weirdest days, the cub purred, a sound Sarnans. Definitely, absolutely, positively not. Supposed to make Thessa's scanner. Started smoking, the Galactic Conservation Council convened an emergency session 3 hours later. Derek was not invited, which was fine by him. He had air filters to replace. What he did not know, as he worked elbow deep in a recycling processor on Deck 7, was that his lunch break had just rewritten 5,000 cycles of conservation protocol. The human demonstrated that we have been treating intelligent species as biological machines, Crystal reported to the assembled council members. We focused entirely on physical needs while ignoring social and emotional requirements. You are proposing we feed sandwiches to endangered species, one council member asked incredulously. I am proposing we treat them as people, not specimens, Crickstall corrected. The Sarthan cubs did not need different food, they needed a reason to eat. They needed social context. The council debated for 6 hours. In the end, they established new guidelines. Conservation efforts must include species-appropriate social enrichment. Food must be offered, not just provided. Captive creatures must be treated as individuals capable of forming bonds. They called it the Walsh Protocol. Derek, upon hearing this 2 days later, laughed so hard he nearly dropped his wrench. They named it after me, the guy who just shared his lunch. You saved an entire species, Velor pointed out. I sat down and broke my sandwich into smaller pieces. That's not exactly hero stuff. It was to them. Derek glanced at the habitat monitor mounted in the maintenance corridor. Both cubs were thriving now, eating properly, playing with enrichment items. They had names now, official ones, approved by the council. Derek still called them pickles and mayo. Hey, speaking of food, Derek said, checking his work schedule, you guys are out of mustard in the commissary. The cubs prefer the spicy brown kind. Velora stared at him. The cubs have a mustard preference. Yeah, Mayo likes it on the training treats. Pickles prefers the regular yellow. Derek closed up the access panel, testing the airflow. Anyway, can you put in a supply request? I'm showing them how to high-five tomorrow, and I need proper motivation. Treats. I will submit the request immediately, thanks. Derek gathered his tools and headed toward the next repair job, already thinking about the gravity coupling that had been making weird noises in Section 12 behind him. Velmora stood very still, then slowly pulled out a data pad and typed, emergency requisition, human grade, mustard, multiple varieties, priority, critical, reason, species preservation. Clears throat. Somewhere in the command center, Thonrich received the request, read it twice, and approved it without question. Clears throat because when a human sandwich could save a species, you did not question the mustard, you just made sure you had enough in stock. 3 months later, the Sarnan cubs were thriving. Conservation stations across 12 sectors had implemented the Walsh Protocol with unprecedented success rates. Endangered species were forming bonds with their caretakers, eating properly, showing behaviors scientists had never documented. And Derek Walsh Maintenance technician continued fixing air filters and unclogging waste. Systems occasionally stopping by. Habitat 3 during lunch breaks, the cubs always greeted him the same way, with chirps, tail wags, and patient waiting for whatever sandwich he had brought. That day, sometimes saving the galaxy, just required remembering that everyone, human or otherwise, ate better with